Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the Minute Waltz fades away once more, it is my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners around the world, but also to welcome to this programme this week 4 brilliant, talented comedy performers who once more are going to try and display their comic talent, their wit, and their verbal ingenuity as they improvise on a subject that I give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And they are seated on my right, Paul Merton and Jenny Eclair, and seated on my left, Julian, Clary, and Gyles Brandreth. Please welcome all 4 of them. Seated beside me is Trudy Stevens, who's going to help me keep the score, and she'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds have elapsed. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the White Rock Theatre in Hastings. And we're going to have a lot of fun as we start the show. And Paul, it's, I think, your turn to begin. So the subject now is why television will never catch on. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
John Logie Baird, one of the inventors of television, used to walk along the cliffs here at Hastings. He'd moved to this area to recover from tuberculosis, and he enjoyed the sea air. He came up with this idea of television sometime in the early 1920s.
Giles, challenge.
I'm afraid he didn't come up with the idea. Paul was correct. I mean, this is deviation is what I'm challenging on. When he said he was one of the pioneers,
oh, yes.
I thought how clever he was. But then later, he foolishly said he came up with this idea. The idea, in fact, I think, was come up with by an American called Philo Farnworth, as I recall.
Giles, put it in your next book. He did establish at the beginning that he was one of the pioneers.
Yes, and then he deviated from the truth. Having established the truth, he went off it. But that's fine. Fine, if you don't want the truth, this is that sort of program. It doesn't matter. That's fine. That's fine.
There are occasions when
I mean, you know, the mission to explain is no longer part and parcel of the Radio 4 remit. That's fine.
Right. So I tell you what we'll do, Giles, because the audience enjoyed your interruption, we'll give you a point for that. Oh. But Paul was interrupted, so he gets the point, keeps the subject, and he still has 47 seconds. Why television will never catch on, starting now.
Who knows, we may come to see the end of television now that you're able to pick up pictures on mobile phones, and somehow we've managed to bring this marvellous inventive? That's not a word.
Julian, you challenge.
Sadly, hesitation.
Yes, because we interpret that as hesitation. Right, Julian, tell us something now about why television will never catch on. 37 seconds, starting now.
Television will never catch on because it's very boring compared to radio, and when you switch it on, there's lots of homosexuals there prancing about on your screen. It's not my idea of a good night in. So, I think radio is the way forward, and I've repeated it.
Jenny, challenge.
He said radio twice.
Yes, you did say radio twice.
know.
Jenny, you got in on the subject of why television will never catch on. There are 24 seconds available, starting now.
May I beg to differ? Telly's caught on in my house. I love the thing. You know, last night I went to see something National Theatre. Very good. Cost 60 quid for 2 tickets. Came home, thought this is much cheaper. Sat in front of the box watching Big Brother. Value for money, if you ask me. I've got 4 tellys, I'm very proud to say. When I wake up in the morning...
Paul, challenge.
No, I was wrong. So I thought it was a repetition of telly, but it was telly and tellies, wasn't it?
Yes,
so,
right.
Singular and plural.
Yes.
So Jenny has another point for an incorrect challenge and 4 seconds on why television will never catch on, starting now.
I like to have different drinks with different television programmes, for example.
Yes.
No!
Yes. Paul, you were first.
Repetition of different.
Yeah.
Different drinks with different television programmes.
Yeah. Same, innit?
2 seconds, Paul. Why television will never catch on, starting now.
If you turn on your
Jenny, challenge.
Turn.
It's sad watching a human being crumble in front of your eyes.
So, Paul, you have 1 second on why television will never catch on, starting now.
1956 was an extremely good year.
So Paul was speaking then as the whistle went with an extra point, another in the round. He's now moved forward just ahead of Giles and Julian and Jenny. Julian, oh, what a lovely subject. Misdemeanours. tell us something about misdemeanors in this game, starting now.
When I was in Sydney, I went to a gentleman's club, and who should be the drag act but a Misdemeanours, along with Maud Boat. The thing that annoyed me about Misdemeanours was that she was doing my act. She came out and she said...
Gyles challenge.
Repetition of act.
Oh, yes. So
He must
when you
have
went...
been desperate.
You mentioned you were doing an act and she was doing my act. So, Gyles, a correct challenge, 48 seconds. Tell us something about misdemeanors, starting now.
30 years ago, I was on a committee set up to investigate the scourge of pornography in our society, and I still have the raincoat I bought at the time. We were a strange group, a bishop, an archbishop, a rabbi, and Cliff Richard.
That's got to be the beginning of a joke. All go into a pub.
No, Jenny challenged her.
I was wrong. I'd like to apologise, Giles. I think bishop and archbishop are two different words.
are,
Yes, I do apologise,
Not even
Giles.
hyphenated. You didn't apologise, Nam. We love your keenness. But Jenny,
desperation
all
it
that
is,
happens
actually.
is that Giles gets a point for an incorrect challenge. 35 seconds, misdemeanors, starting now.
We went over to Copenhagen to reap the alien porn, and there in the capital of Denmark we found misdemeanors.
Jenny's challenge.
Again, I'd like to apologise to Giles. I came in too early, and I thought he was deviating because I hadn't heard anything about misdemeanours, really.
I saw you shifted uncomfortably in your seat when you said that,
what
yes.
he was going to tell us next.
Well, he'll hear, because I know. I was interviewing him shortly after that on another programme I did. But carry on.
You do other programmes?
You wicked so-and-so.
Surely.
Yes, surely. And not only the ones you know about, some which were less known. It was called Look Who's Talking.
Oh.
And it was on Radio 4, and we used to have a chat show about all kinds of things in the news. And Giles came on once to talk about this report which he'd done and his visit to Copenhagen. And he was very erudite and very amusing and quite explicit as well. So,
So we won't challenge then?
no, incorrect challenge. 30 seconds, misdemeanors, starting now.
Misdemeanors on that particular occasion adopted the costume of a milkmaid and said she would do for us anything that we wished. And she got out this extraordinary bucket and produced these false udders. This was the moment at which Nicholas became quite nervous, indeed began to perspire, and the slight toupee that he was wearing slipped forward on his head. And his neck began to flush in a most extraordinary way that I hadn't seen on a man of his years
Julian
before.
challenged.
Two extraordinaries.
Two extraordinaries, yes. I'm surprised nobody had him for the deviation of the toupee on my head, because such a thing has never existed on my scalp.
I didn't say it was on your head.
Nicholas, that surely is a wig. Nobody would have their hair cut like that.
Come round and pull it. Julian, you had a correct challenge. You have 8 seconds. You have misdemeanors starting now.
Come round here and pull this. When you think about it, just a minute is really a game of misdemeanours. There must be no repetition, deviation, or hesitation.
So Julian was again speaking as the whistle went, and with the points that he got then and the ones that Giles got in that round, they both moved forward. They're both equal in first place, one ahead of Paul Merton, and then comes Jenny Eclair. And Jenny, will you begin the next round? The subject now, breaking records. 60 seconds, starting now.
There are many ways to break records. You can be the fattest, thinnest, shortest, tallest, smallest.
Paul
You
challenge.
can't be all of those things, surely. You can't be the fattest, thinnest, tallest, shortest person that ever lived. I mean, it's just...
It's a variety of people that would
you
end up
didn't make
in the
that clear.
Guinness Book of Records. I wasn't allowed to finish my sentence.
Paul, we enjoyed your interruption.
Did we?
No, she didn't make it clear.
No, I
but
didn't
it
think she
doesn't
did
matter.
either.
But I understood.
Did
that
you?
Yes, I definitely understood. She meant that you don't have to be that all at the same time. There were individually different records that were going. So give Paul a bonus point because we enjoyed the interruption. Jenny gets a point because she was interrupted.
Yes!
And she keeps the subject with 55 seconds to go, Jenny. Breaking records starting now.
All these people may gain entry into the Guinness Book of Records. How I adored looking at that Chinese lady with the long curly talons reaching the floor. What fun. Page 53, a bald dog. Oh my goodness.
Giles challenged.
I collected the Guinness Book of Records. The animal records always appeared at the back of the book.
In my head, I can see a picture of a bald dog on page 54.
Yes.
I would like someone now to bring out a Guinness Book of Records and prove me wrong.
Here we are. I've got one here. Page 54, a picture of the moon rocket.
No. Yeah, exactly.
We don't want to be too pedantic about things. I don't think it matters really in this game whether it was the front or the back of the book. I'm going to be generous and give the benefit of the doubt to Jenny. So, Jenny, you continue on bald records. Breaking records. 36 seconds starting now.
Personally, I like breaking records by smashing vinyl. Do you remember on the circuit years ago, there used to be a fellow called...
Paul challenge.
It's very difficult to smash vinyl. You can smash the old 78s because they were made of shellac, but vinyl, you can't really smash
No,
it.
you can't really smash vinyl.
But do you remember that fellow called Woody Bot Muddin? He used to nail records to a wooden post and then smash them with a hammer.
They
You
weren't-
do! I haven't made it all up
They
in my
weren't
head.
vinyl, they were 78s.
There was definitely 78s you can smash.
Yeah.
And even the little 45s you can
Yeah.
smash. I gave the benefit of the doubt to you last time, Jenny, so this time I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to Paul, and he has a point for a correct challenge, and he has 32 seconds, breaking records, Paul, starting now.
When the Beatles first started their recording career back in 1962, they initially were seen as just a four-piece band from Liverpool who may have a couple of hit records and would shortly disappear. But the thing that Paul McCartney and John Lennon did as the chief songwriters of that group was to compose their own tunes. This hadn't been done before by a popular beat combo. They used to rely on professional songwriters who used to hang around Denmark Street in London and come up to you and say, "Here, want a ballad?" And that was how it used to work. But those four pop...
Julian, you challenged.
A repetition of four.
And there was...
Almost.
Almost.
That's one
And you
word.
got in with 2 seconds to go, Julian. But it was a correct challenge. A point to Julian. 2 seconds. Breaking records, Julian, starting now.
I hold the Savoy for swallowing the most Savoys.
Paul, you did manage to challenge before the whistle. What was
Yeah,
it?
well, he meant to say I hold the record for eating the most Savaloys, but said I hold the Savaloy for...
You don't
It's
know.
almost like he's got a one-track mind.
Yeah, something was coming out from his unconscious there, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You don't know what I'm doing under the table.
I know exactly what you're doing. It's who, I don't know.
Well, I mean, within the rules of just a minute, you did mention Savaloy twice. It's very interesting.
Deviation as well.
Well, one was battered.
I tell you what we'll do.
What?
We'll give you a point because it was a correct challenge,
Yeah,
Paul,
yeah.
and leave the subject with Julian with half a second to go on breaking records starting now.
I received my prize when I went to Buckingham.
So Julian was again speaking as the whistle went, and with the points that he got then, he's in second place alongside Jenny Eclair. Giles is one behind them, and Paul's out in the lead. And Giles, your turn to begin. And the subject we've got now is pulling rank. Will you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
Pulling rank is something that happens a great deal at the House of Commons, where I was a member. In the dining room, in fact, the Conservative MPs sit at one end, and at the other you will find the Labour members. And there, what happens, of course, the Liberal Democrats, they wait at table.
Julian challenged.
Hesitation.
Absolutely. He looked at me and he knows I'm a good Liberal Democrat, and so he hesitation, 46 seconds. Julian, pulling rank starting now.
Pulling rank, there but for a small typographical error, could be the story of my life. I don't know much about this subject. I'm not a competitive kind of person, but I did know.
Paul challenged.
He's extremely competitive. Deviation.
Give me an example of how competitive I am.
Well, the last time we played this, you came to the joint leader at the end of the programme.
That's just an accident.
I think there's an element of competitiveness within your nature, but I disagree with the challenge. And you keep the subject, and you have 36 seconds on pulling rank, starting now.
Backstage, before we came on for this old nonsense that we're doing for you this evening, Paul said to me, age before beauty. That's an example of pulling rank. I said, go on then, after you, and he hobbled down the corridor onto the stage, tripped over a bit of lino.
Jenny challenged.
Stage twice.
Yes, he did say
Backstage.
stage twice, yes.
Very true.
So, Jenny, you've got pulling rank, and you have 22 seconds, starting now.
It's very difficult to pull rank when one has no rank to pull. A funny thing happened to me the other day, though. Driving through Chelsea, I had to let someone go before me because he pulled rank. It was Hugh Grant. We were both driving cars in the opposite directions. He had the posher car.
Paul
We were
challenged.
both driving cars in the opposite directions.
I'm doing a mime now, like that.
Radio.
Like that,
Radio.
about,
Radio.
like that.
Where are the cameras?
I don't know.
Deviation. You can't, they're both driving in single directions. They can't both be driving in different directions.
I was heading towards the King's Road and he was heading away from the King's Road, different directions.
I think they were both driving in different directions.
Yes.
All right.
The thing is, it's too late now. You could have had a repetition of driving, but you didn't.
No, I didn't know.
Or cars.
No.
Right. All right. So, Jenny, you have the subject still. 5 seconds, pulling rank, starting now.
The famous bloke.
Paul, challenge.
Repetition of driving and cars.
No, I did establish before she started again, you can't have that challenge now.
Oh, really?
Yes, I did
Got
say
to laugh,
that.
though, didn't it?
You got to laugh. So you get a point because you were interrupted. 5 seconds, pulling rank, starting now.
I pulled my automobile over to the side so that...
So Jenny Eclair got a lot of points in that round. She was pulling everything out and making it all work. And only 1 point separates all of them in different directions. Julian, we'd like you to take the next round. 1 in the eye. I think the audience have got the reference immediately. Very good subject for Hastings. But will you talk on the subject, Julian? 60 seconds, starting now.
1 in the eye.
That was hesitation.
It was hesitation,
wasn't it?
Well, I was just thanking God. I was saying a little prayer.
Yes, I mean, I think one has to do it because you did. It's 1.5 seconds before you started, and normally people do begin more accurate. So, Paul, I have to be fair with the rules of just a minute and say that was the correct challenge. So you have 1 in the eye, and there are 58.5 seconds starting now.
King Harold woke up on the morning of the battle in 1066 and thought to himself, you know, I think my eyesight's getting better. And then he headed out towards the conflict and somebody said, what's that? He looked up and an arrow pierced the back of his retina, and from then on he was unable to wear a proper pair of glasses. 1 in the eye can also be used as a term where you say to somebody, I got you 1 in the eye. Now, what exactly does that mean? Let me take you back to the early days of pugilism. When Nicholas Parsons was fighting in 1787, under the name of the Battling Wino, he was perhaps one of the finest boxers this country ever produced. Now, to look at him, you would think to yourself, I wonder what happened to that deck chair, because somebody there is a coat that's been cut out of the back of it.
So, Julian, you challenged.
Hesitation. Sort of fell over his words, did he not?
Well, it was
I
really
don't think so, but after what he said, I think...
deviation.
deviation, yes.
It wasn't gallant either.
My jacket didn't come from a deck chair.
No.
No, Oxfam.
21 seconds, Julian. 1 in the eye, starting now.
As we've heard, there was a bit of a ruck around these parts in 1066, somewhere near here, and some chap...
Gyles, challenge.
Repetition of 1066.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's not, he hasn't said it in this round, and he hasn't said it at all.
I thought he said it earlier.
No, he didn't
I said it
speak.
earlier.
Oh.
He didn't speak. He started. He was challenged for hesitation.
Paul, I heard Paul. I've lost another point. That's fine.
You haven't lost it. Giles, I know you haven't lost
Julian's
a point.
got a point. Julian,
He gained a point.
That's nice. That's lovely. That's great. That's perfect. I'm very, very pleased.
I think you should take your tablets before you come on.
That's fine.
Julian, 15 seconds. 1 in the eye, starting now.
Anyone got a stun gun? It was awful. And apparently I've been hypnotised, and I went back in time, and I was at that battle. I was just a lowly soldier. Didn't have a knife or a stick or anything. I had a broom, and I went at the enemy. Don't know who they were. Like there was no tomorrow. And
So Julian, with points in the round and 1 for speaking as a whistle went, has leapt forward. All very close. And Jenny, it's back with you to begin. And the subject now, a great subject for you, I'm sure, a Bodice-Ripper. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
A Bodice-Ripper is one of those books wherein young wenches with milky breasts heaving get ravished every 10 minutes by sulky brutes, usually with scars on their faces. Catherine Cookson, she a local gal, used to write Bodice-Rippers. Also, they were called clog and shawl novellas. I don't read this sort of muck because I am an intellectual genius. Blue stocking.
Giles, you challenged.
Deviation. She's not a blue stocking, and how is she so familiar with this work if she doesn't read any of it? I've never known a more accurate and indeed more vivid account of what appears in a Bodice-Ripper than that given to us just now by Jenny. It was extraordinary. It brought the whole thing to life. There's an erotic charge in the theatre.
I know, but she brought it to life, and but you're challenging.
Deviation, she just said she never reads these things. It's evident that she does.
She might have watched it on television.
No.
I'll tell you what I've done, Giles.
Yeah.
OK, you want the truth of this?
Yeah.
I read for an old blind lady. That's what I do. And every week she asks me to go to the library and she says to me in her frail little voice, Jenny, could you get me a Bodice-Ripper? And I say, Enid.
Please,
You're proving my point. You do read these things on a regular basis, once a week. It's part of your commitment to charity. It's excellent.
So I think I deserve an extra point for that.
No, you've got the subject, and you have 29 seconds. A Bodice-Ripper still with you, Jenny, starting now.
I wish I had the sort of bosom that could rip fabric. Unfortunately, I've got one of those mean, British, measly old woman bosoms.
Charles Judge.
This is truly deviation.
You mean she's well upholstered?
She has got beautiful breasts.
Well, there's only one way to find out.
They're not going to rent fabric, let's face it, Giles.
Definitely, Giles, you have the subject. A Bodice-Ripper's with you, 22 seconds starting now.
I'm totally against Bodice-Rippers, sometimes known as sweet savagery. No, it's revolting that one actually tries to take advantage of women within the pages of a book, describing them in these lurid and disgusting
Giles,
terms.
Julian challenge.
Hesitation.
There was a hesitation as you stumbled over your word then, Giles. So,
That's fine.
Julian, you tell us something about Bodice-Ripper. 11 seconds starting now.
I've never read a Bodice-Ripper, but I have read a Trouser-Ripper.
Repetition of read. I haven't read, but I have read.
Yes, Paul, well listened. And you have 8 seconds. A Bodice-Ripper starting now.
If you can imagine the scene, Victorian London, the gaslights are playing merrily about in the street, and suddenly round the corner comes a horse and cart.
So Paul Merton was speaking as the whistle went. He's moved forward into the lead alongside Jenny Eclair, but they're only 1 point ahead of Julian, Clary and Gyles Brandreth in that order. And Giles, would you take the next round or start it? I mean, words borrowed from the French. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
I recall President George Bush saying that the problem with the French is that they have no word for entrepreneur. The English language is very much indebted to the French because, in fact, things like pas de deux, meaning father of two, or even coup de grâce, interpreted as mow the lawn, esprit de corps, I suppose, could be an embalming fluid. It's extraordinary, the range of vocabulary if one goes to that country across the Channel. I myself was educated at the Lycée Français de Londres, and consequently, having borrowed from the French, I've returned it because as the years have gone by, I've begun to forget the words that I used to know, like ballet, which of course comes from the French, means a small dance, or even zigzag, which also comes from the French language.
Paul Town.
Repetition of comes from.
Comes from, because it was so interesting.
That's fine.
A justified round of applause, Giles, but Paul had a correct challenge. 11 seconds. Words borrowed from the French. Paul, starting now.
This is not the easiest subject for me to speak about because I didn't do French at school. I was unfortunately put in the metalwork class. But if we are to look at those magnificent neighbours of...
So I'll give you the situation as we move into the final round. Paul was again speaking as a whistle went, gained that extra point. He's now 1 ahead of Jenny, who's 1 ahead of Julian, who's 1 ahead of Giles, in that order.
Yeah, well done, everybody.
It almost deserves a bonus point, doesn't it? Right, he's trailing a little, so give him that extra point. Give Giles another point. Paul, it's your turn to begin. The subject is, if I had a time machine. Strange subject, 60 seconds, starting now.
If I had a time machine, I would undoubtedly travel into the future. There's not much point in going back to the past. We know what's happened. But indeed, the thing that is ahead of us, what will it be like in the year 2099? Will Just a Minute still be on the air? Probably it will be somewhere or other, broadcast in this magnificent building that we are now. And that transmission will be heard on the World Service and also on the internet and everywhere else. If I was to travel into...
Julian challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, there was a
Sadly.
hesitation there, Paul. Yes, he was wondering where he should go next.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't really go very far, did I, really?
You travelled tonight. I thought you were going to say your usual thing, and Nicholas Parsons will still be doing it in 2099.
Oh, no.
32 seconds available, Julian. If I had a time machine starting now.
If I had a time machine, I'd travel back to when this theatre was last decorated and have a word with the man who chose the curtain. What did he think of that? It's an outrage. I'll describe it for the listener. They're kind of grey with red splodges, and the carpet's another matter. I suspect this was done in the 60s and marijuana was involved. You know what I'm saying? Around these parts, it may have came on a little ship across the water, bobbing into the bay, and the architect, which I've already said once, but no one's done anything about it.
Could I have a word?
Yes.
On behalf of the Hastings Tourism Board.
Oh, yes, carry on.
Are you being paid by them?
Well, no, it's a beautiful theatre. It's exquisite.
I was talking about the curtains.
That won't get you any points in just a minute. What is your challenge within the rules of just a minute?
I have no challenge. I'm just on the side of the losers here, the poor saps who have to come to this theatre week in, week out. There's appalling decor that's just been so vividly described. No,
You've been
there was
listening so-
hesitation.
No, there wasn't. You repeated something.
Yes, he did. He repeated something.
Giles, you've been so sharp all the way through, but you missed that. He actually said what he'd repeated.
Yes, he did.
But you didn't challenge him.
Yeah, but I am going to be last in this programme if it kills me. And I'm at the moment tied bottom, so he needs another point.
You've got a tied bottom?
Right, Julian. Incorrect challenge. So you have 3 seconds on if I had a time machine starting now.
If I had a time machine, I'd travel into the future and find that this theatre was looking at magnificent.
Well, let me give you the final score. On this occasion, Giles finished just in third place. Only just.
Is that bottom, though?
Yeah, but it's not really bottom. I mean, it was a magnificent, brilliant third place.
Oh, the last shall be first.
And Jenny was in a superb second place. But she was only 2 points behind Paul Merton and Julian Clary, equal together in first place. So we say they are the winners jointly this week. Thank you. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute, and it only remains for me to say thank you to these four delightful and excellent players of the game: Paul Merton, Jenny Eclair, Gyles Brandreth and Julian Clary. I thank Trudy Stevens, who's helped me with the score. She's blown her whistle with great aplomb. We thank our producer, Toulouse Galani. We're indebted to Ian Messer, who created this amazing game, and we're grateful to this lovely audience here in Hastings at the White Rock Theatre, who cheered us on our way of magnificent end. Thank you. From our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the panel, goodbye. Tune in, listeners, the next time we play Just a Minute.